Greetings once again from Snake Mountain Boat Works on Monday, January 9, 2023. Yeah, there she is, upside down and looking ugly. This is our 1948 16-foot Chris Craft special runabout. Joe and Rick have begun removing bottom planks, and I've had repeated requests for actually shooting a video while something like this is actually going on, so that the community can share with us how we go about, in particular in this case, removing the outside planks from an old boat. So Joe, I'm going to hand it over to you. And
yeah, so one of the biggest things when you're doing these is, well, first off, it's not a quick, easy process whatsoever. We do have some tips and tricks here that do kind of speed it up. One of them is to make sure you have a very sharp road approach. You want a good pick, a good brand new bit, and an air line.
And this is a Pearson bit, right? Reed and Prince, not a Phillips. A Phillips will just tear the heads off.
So on most boats where we know that the bottom planks are sound and we're probably going to be able to reuse them, we'll go ahead and strip the bottom. But in this case, we already know that these planks, they're very beat, they're dry rotted, they're not good. So what we did is we take an orbital and just kind of quickly go over the seams, because on this boat you can actually see, if you come down here, barely without even having to sand it, you can see where every seam is on this boat, every frame, butt block. So once they're stripped down to what this looks like,
which you're doing with an orbital sander, right?
Right. Once we get down to this point where we can see all the filler, in this case there's some epoxy, and there's a couple different bits. But you want to go center on with your rotor broach, press down. Once you hear that nice grinding sound, you pull it out, blow it out, and then you take your pick and drive it down into the center of the screw and kind of just get all the gunk and filler and everything out like that. Blow it out one more time, and you can take your bit and just slowly back it out. A lot of the time you'll find some that are either broken or spinning, or they'll come up very little bit and then they'll want to drive back down, which usually is an indication that there's a screw broken or it just failed. And on this boat, there is slotted, there is Pearson. So they range from number 4, number 5s, and the biggest ones I found so far is 8. But this boat, the bottom planks were majorly put on with number 6 Pearsons.
And these are cedar planks, right? Spanish cedar, like the sides are.
Yes.
Which actually everybody should know gives us a kind of another layer of complexity, because cedar is not nearly as dense as mahogany is, and when it comes time later to put the new planks on, if you can find it, it should be Spanish cedar. I don't know if we can. I'll try. You don't want to drive everything as hard as you would into mahogany, because the cedar is a good deal lighter and softer and less dense, and you'll just drive right through it.
Right. And like I said, it is not a fast job by any means. And usually on a boat this size, I can get it most of the way stripped off within one day. Once again, depends on what there is for damage, what there is for screws, what they use to fill it. A lot of the times we'll find out that there was a lot of clay in a lot of these, which cleans out a lot easier. But when the new technologies came, like right here, every white spot, this is all done with some kind of caulk. I'm not sure if it's like a 5200 or something that was put in after the fact, but they're not deep whatsoever.
And it's really hard.
It's really hard, and it's just barely covering, so we can tell that these were put in as an afterthought. Maybe something failed, a cracked plank, it could be a number of different things, but usually when the planks start loosening up, you're going to notice that your planks are going to cup, and when they cup, good indication that your screws have either failed or just broken. I mean, there's a bunch of different things that could happen, but that's a sure sign of broken screws or rotted out frames when all of your planks start to cup.
on the next frame, this is really interesting. There's see the train of white spots? That means that somebody at some point, it'll be interesting when we turn this over and see if there's a sister under here, but he or she just doubled up all of the fasteners for reasons we can't understand yet.
Right, and actually all the ones that are under the white are all slotted screws, which is kind of weird. You'd think that the ones that would be added afterwards would be the Fearson, but they're actually the slotted ones that are added in afterwards.
And Joe, as I look on the other side, I see a mass of horrible black stuff. What's all that?
That is canvas with a little bit of what they call mystery goop. As you can tell, it kind of looks like tar mixed with paraffin wax. I mean, it's pretty nasty stuff, but that was what they used at the time, was canvas and the nice little slurry that they put on as a binder, and it would be, as it gets wet and swells up, that's what caused it to not leak.
Yeah, in theory, not leak.
In theory.
Yeah, and each of the marks had a different secret sauce, and evidently it was a matter of a certain amount of corporate espionage to try to figure out what the guy down the block was using for his or hers. Now, I just wanted to jump in here. This boat doesn't have it. It's quite often I get questions from people who are opening up their first Chris Craft. I just had a fellow contact me the other day. He said, what in God's name am I supposed to do with these? There's thousands and thousands and thousands of little tiny brass screws that go in from the bilge through this inner layer and into the outer. Now, this particular boat appears to only have them.
Not very often.
There's one.
There's very few.
One. There's one. So we know the pattern. We've had particularly U-22s, pre-war boats almost without exception. In this area, there might be 300 of these little guys. Well, so I did it at the beginning, and I became the laughing stock of the shop for the day. I got in there with because they're all slotted, I got in there with a screwdriver and started trying to back them out. Well, they don't back out of this stuff. Don't worry about it, just leave them there. Pry the outside planks off the way we are, and then you're gonna pry the inside. You're not gonna reuse any of this, and particularly you're not gonna reuse that. This inner skin, which
believe it or not, it's cedar.
It's cedar as well, yeah.
And it's actually fairly thick. For what they used to, or for what I usually take off, is a lot thinner. Give me 1 second, but if you see there, that is almost 1/4 of an inch. That is pretty thick. Inner skin for one of these boats are usually about an 1/8 inch, usually at the thickest for the inner skin. So that's, I mean, being a cedar boat, I mean, that's another thought of what they used at the time. But as Mike was saying, on the inside, it's hundreds and hundreds of these little screws. And a lot of the times too, you're gonna find nails. On this boat, I have found every kind of fastener that you can think of. I've had ring shanks, regular framing nails in the bottom of it. But you never know what these boats hold until you really start taking them apart. For instance, when I first saw this boat, I thought, it was gonna be pretty easy, but look, starting to take this bottom off, it's always a new challenge that we love to accept here.
So we'll keep drilling and screwing, and you can find the source for the Rotobrooch. You can purchase them on Amazon.com, but I'll put the link to the one particular one we use in the write-up to this video. Remember, if you don't click show more right below the screen, you miss the detailed write-up that accompanies every Snake Mountain Boat Works video. And with that, thank you very much, Bye-bye for now from Snake Mountain Boatworks.